welcome to Talking Points. I'm Kay Erickson with the League of Women Voters of South Tonka, and today we're talking about the Metropolitan Council. You may have heard the council talked about in recent stories about the Southwest Rail Line or regional parks, but those two areas are just a small part of the responsibilities of the Metropolitan Council. To explore what the Metropolitan Council does, why it was established, and how its decisions affect our 7-county metro area, we're going to be talking to two members of the Metropolitan Council's governing board, Jennifer Munt and Katie Rodriguez. Joining me for this conversation is Karen Schaffer. Karen is chair of the League's Council of Metropolitan Area Leagues, or CMAL. She's also a member of the Roseville Area League. Karen, can you tell us a little bit about the Council of Metropolitan Area Leagues?
Yes, Kay, the Council of Metropolitan Area League of Women Voters is a voluntary association of all of the local leagues in the 7-county metro area. We were established in 1962, before the Metropolitan Council, and we worked with the University of Minnesota and the Citizens League on the legislation which created the Metropolitan Council that we have today.
Well, thank you, Karen. Thank you for your work on CMAL. Now I'd like to welcome Jennifer Munt, who served on the council since 2011 and lives in Minnetonka. She represents District 3, which includes the cities in our South Lake area. Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kay. It's my pleasure to be on the show.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your district at all? I know you have 17 cities, which seems like a lot to cover.
So a Met Council district includes 178,000 constituents, and my constituents live in Eden Prairie and Chanhassen, as well as 15 other suburbs around Lake Minnetonka.
So it means you've got to get around a lot.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. Can you give us a little bit about the history? Give us a thumbnail sketch of the Metropolitan Council, how it got started, why it was established, the governing board, what it does, who pays for it?
Absolutely. A lot of folks don't know about the Metropolitan Council, and that's okay. The Metropolitan Council is the regional government for the 7-county metropolitan area in the Twin Cities. And we were created in 1967 as the brainchild of the legislature. At the time, there was rapid growth in the metro area, and there was growing water pollution. And those were issues that no single city could address by themselves. And so we created the Metropolitan Council as a way of tackling problems regionally. Today, we do many things. People laugh, but I say we do 4 things: buses, flushes, parks, and housing. So with respect to buses, Metro Transit and the suburban providers provide 99 million rides last year. That's a really big deal because it gets people to work and to school. We also make sure that every time you flush your toilet, that wastewater is handled in an efficient way. And we also do regional parks. So the Metropolitan Council gets funding from the Legacy Amendment. And we review the plans that each park agency has for how they want to spend that money. The reason that we handle parks is because there are certain parks that are a destination for everyone in the Twin Cities. For example, it would be unfair to ask St. Paul to fund Como Park Conservatory when folks from out here use that facility often. I take painting classes, and that gets me through winter to be able to go into a warm conservatory filled with flowers. So we also do housing. We are the biggest dispenser of Section 8 housing vouchers so that people can live in communities where they have an opportunity to succeed. So that's what the Met Council does, and we're funded through a variety of sources: state sources, federal sources, and also through user fees. So when you pay your fare to ride a bus, you're paying for the Met Council. When you pay for your sewer and wastewater treatment, you are paying for the Met Council. So we do a lot of work that touches people's daily lives.
I'd like to pick up on the first part of the council's job, which you called buses. And that, of course, includes the light rail system, that the Metropolitan Council is building. And I think what we'd like you to do is to give us a little update, a kind of status picture of the Southwest Light Rail Transit Project, kind of where it's been and where it is and where it might go.
Absolutely. So the Southwest Light Rail is the extension of the Green Line, which connects Minneapolis and St. Paul. And that line has been successful beyond anyone's expectations. So Southwest would connect that line through Minneapolis, St. Louis Park, Hopkins, Minnetonka, and Eden Prairie. The line has been in the making for a decade, and it has the support of all of the 5 cities along the line, and additionally Edina. We have the support of the vast majority of the people who live near the line and hope to ride it. And we have worked very closely with developers to bring housing development and commercial development along the line. So this project is a decade in the making. We have spent $160 million on it so far. The vast majority of the people along the line, including the businesses, are very supportive of it. And what they realize is, well, not everybody's going to ride the light rail line. Everyone will benefit from it. Out in the West Metro, what we know is we have had more business growth here than they have in Minneapolis and St. Paul combined. And most of us, without light rail, would be sitting in traffic jams. And what the business community knows is that we can't attract the best and the brightest to come and live here if they're going to spend more time in traffic than they are with their families. We also know that an aging population in the Twin Cities demands transportation. So my mom is a good example. She's 83 and she can't drive at night because she can no longer see well. Well, she lives along the Green Line and she's able to take the train to the Guthrie Theater, and that means that her life doesn't stop because her eyes don't see well at night. We also know that millennials choose first where they're going to live and then where they're going to work. My generation, we moved to where the job was, and then we figured out where we were going to live near where we worked. The new millennials do it the opposite. They choose the cities where they want to live, and then they find a job nearby. They want to live in cities where they can choose to leave the car in the garage, where they can commute by train. And so somebody who chooses the train can save $10,000 a year on transportation costs. So my daughter and her husband are a classic example. They live along a light rail line, so they have 1 car instead of 2. That enabled them to move from renting a home to owning a home. And one spouse travels to work, the other on the train, and the other spouse drives. So this has been able to create a higher quality of life for them. And I'll give you another example of why this is beneficial. I've got a constituent who lives in Mound, and she works at Wells Fargo in downtown Minneapolis. Wells Fargo gives her a bus pass, and they credit her with the 2 hours that she spends on the bus commuting to work in the morning. Her bus has got Wi-Fi. She's able to do work on her iPad, and that means she only spends 6 hours in the office. That gives her 2 additional hours every day to spend with her children. So people who ride transit have tremendous benefits, and those who don't benefit because there's less traffic on our roads. So we're hoping that Southwest Light Rail will begin construction in 2017 so that people can hop on and ride in 2021. We are encouraged that the federal government will provide half of the funding, which is nearly $1 billion, and that will match funding at the state level. The cities are extremely excited about this and lobbying for it at the Capitol.
Let's talk about the second thing you mentioned, which is water. Water is always a huge issue out here because we are around the lakes. And a few years ago, we had tremendous rains, and we ended up with a city that spilled water or sewage into Lake Minnetonka. Can you talk about the Met Council and how cities work with the Met Council to try and prevent those things from happening, or can we prevent those things from happening?
Well, the greatest lesson from the tragedy of having to dump into Lake Minnetonka was that both the Met Council and the City of Mound agreed that we all want clean lakes and dry basements. What ended up happening is there were torrential rains in 2011 in the month of May through June. And the City of Mound was forced to discharge raw sewage into Lake Minnetonka. My grandkids who live on the island couldn't swim at their normal beach. Now, the reason that that happened is there was an extraordinary amount of stormwater entering the sanitary sewers. And that happened for a couple reasons. It happened first because some of the very old pipes had been damaged by tree roots over time and needed to be upgraded. It also happened because many private homeowners were illegally draining their stormwater into the sanitary sewers. So what we learned was a typical home that's illegally hooked up to the sanitary sewers was dumping clean water from roof drains, from sump pumps that they use to keep their basements dry. They were dumping that clean water into the sanitary sewers. Now, clean water shouldn't be in sanitary sewers because we use expensive, harsh chemicals to treat the water that you displace from your toilet bowl. So we have partnered jointly with the City of Mound after that happened to do two things. First of all, we want to find out where our infrastructure needs upgrading. The Met Council is committed $40 million to improve the infrastructure that we have for sanitary sewers in the area. So folks who live in the Mound area right now are seeing new lift stations built at Langdon Lake and on Wilshire Boulevard. And so that will help increase the capacity of our storm sewers.
So that project is under construction as we speak.
It's under construction as we speak, and what I want viewers to know is that there will be short-term pain during construction for long-term gain because the quality of our lakes is in jeopardy. We are also working to identify the homeowners who are illegally draining their sump pumps into the sanitary sewers. So a sump pump used to keep your basement dry should be draining into your yard or into the streets. When you put that into our sanitary sewers, they can't handle that much flow. So for example, in 2011, Mound is a city the size of 9,000. It was putting more flow into the sanitary sewer than was the city of Eden Prairie, which is 6 times the size. And so it wasn't because on the days it rained, people were taking twice as many showers or laundering twice as many loads of dirty laundry. It wasn't because they were watering their lawns more. It was because the clean water was going into the sanitary sewers. I'm confident that with the improvements that the City of Mound and the Metropolitan Council are making right now, that we will make it through the spring without having to discharge sewage into Lake Minnetonka. The bottom line, folks, is we want to have clean lakes and dry basements, and we think that we've made the investments so that that won't happen again.
Do other cities have the same problems, or is the Met Council equipped to identify other cities that are having the same problems, or do we know that they're okay and those things don't need to be changed in other cities as well?
So we have 107 communities that send their sanitary needs to our Blue Lake wastewater treatment plant. That plant has the capacity to handle 32 million gallons of wastewater every single day. There are other cities that have problems similar to what happened in Mound, and that's because homeowners aren't aware that their homes are discharging clear water into the sanitary sewers. I'll give you an example. There are a lot of homes built in the 70s before the legislature passed the law saying that clean water can't be discharged into sanitary sewers. A lot of folks don't know that they're draining illegally, and the cost is formidable. It costs somewhere between $4,000 and $6,000 to reconnect a home that's dumping into the sanitary sewer. So what we've been able to do is work with the legislature to create a $2 million grant fund to help those homeowners legally connect to the sewer system. So we're getting there step by step, and I'll give you an example. In Minneapolis, where I own a rental property, they sent non-toxic gases through the sewer pipes. And if you had gas in your home, that told you that you were illegally connected. We had to fix my apartment building, and we did that because it was something we needed to do to protect our water quality.
So it sounds like you do have some things in place that'll help people identify where the problems are, and we can fix some of those things.
Exactly.
One last question, Jennifer. Would you have any other examples of how the Metropolitan Council decisions affect cities in the metro area besides the issue that you were just talking about?
Absolutely. We work in close partnership with cities throughout the region. An example of that is Thrive 2040, which is the region's plan for development for the next 30 years. And Thrive has outcomes that we hope to achieve in partnership with cities. Those outcomes are stewardship, prosperity, equity, livability, and sustainability. We work together with cities through their comprehensive plans in order to achieve those outcomes. And a lot of cities, particularly those around the lake that aren't so large, have had a lot of anxiety about comprehensive planning because they've had to hire consultants in order to do that planning, and we've heard those concerns, and we've tried to provide the tools that cities need in order to plan for the future. A lot of our cities out here like to excel, and we've created a toolbox that allows them to do that. So for example, a big issue around the lake is how do I build rain gardens so that if there's a parking lot, it can absorb the oil and the runoff from the car so that it doesn't go into the lake. We've created tools about how to do all of those new and innovative things. We've got examples of how much it would cost, what other cities have done it successfully, so that you can model your practices after folks who've already done it successfully. So we work very closely with cities in order to make sure that what one city does doesn't adversely affect another city. So, for example, when one city adds a lot of development, that can cause traffic issues, pollution issues for other cities. And so we make sure that cities' plans are done in a collaborative way with their neighbors and with the region so that we can create the most livable place in the nation.
Well, it sounds like that you promote conversations among the different cities for the for the good of the whole region.
Exactly.
It's very interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer, for being here today. I really appreciate your input and your expertise. After the break, we'll be talking to Katie Rodriguez, who represents District 1.
LMCC HD is here. Here's how you can watch our Government Channel 8 in high definition. If you have a cable-ready TV, you can watch us on Mediacom Channel 8.1. And if you have a set-top box, you can watch us on Mediacom Channel 808. Your community TV, now in HD.
Welcome back to Talking Points. I'm Kay Erickson with the League of Women Voters of South Tonka. And in this segment of the program, we're going to be talking to Katie Rodriguez, who represents District 1. Her area includes 11 cities in the northwest area of the city.
Well, we'd like to start, Katie, by asking you about the development of the transportation budget that is under consideration at the legislature and how those decisions will affect the Metropolitan Council services.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for having me today. I'm a member of the League, and I'm really grateful for your work that you do to ensure our democracy, so big supporter. Both the transportation bills that are being considered right now in the House and the Senate would be devastating to transit in our region. It's hard to understand it. There's a $1.65 billion surplus. There's hundreds of millions planned for roadway expansion, which I'm glad about. We need it out here. But at the same time, we went from talking about expanding transit to now cutting transit. And it will be devastating. I believe Republican legislators, they've been quite clear, many of them, that they don't support LRT, but that they weren't anti-transit. But the bills being considered right now are absolutely anti-transit. It would cause up to 40% cuts in service, 40%. Right now, we're considering a fare increase. It's 25 cents or 50 cents are the two proposals that are out for public comment. And that's on our base local and express fares. This would cause us to look at something much higher. And again, those 40% cuts to our service. That's also going to have a ripple effect on our Metro Mobility. Our Metro Mobility is the door-to-door paratransit service for the disabled and seniors, and a lifeline for those folks. But because we're shrinking what we're offering for regular route, that will also shrink that service. And then Transit Link is the service we provide it throughout the metro region, but it's really important for where we don't provide Metro Mobility service, and that's a dial-a-ride service, again, door to door. And we would probably have to cut that entirely if the House budget is enacted. And I just want to make that personal. I ride the bus, and I see the people that this is going to impact. It's young people, it's seniors, it's people that are disabled, it's low income, and that's going to have immediate effects right away. It's going to strand folks. They're not going to be able to get to work. They're not going to be able to get to their jobs. 80% of people that use transit are going to work or to school. And it's also going to have a long-term effect where we can't compete with other regions because we don't have transit. I know Jennifer did a great job talking about we need to attract millennials, and millennials want more transit. We're also going to have an increased proportion of seniors in our region, and we got to make sure that we have options for them as well. So it's really serious, and it's also going to those folks that can go to their cars, that have a car to go to, it's going to price them back into their cars as opposed to being on transit. Right now, a bus can take 40 drivers off of the road, and a LRT line can take 600 drivers off the road. So when we don't have transit, we're going to have more congestion. And there was a study done by the National Bureau of Economic Research, and they took advantage of when LA went on a transit strike. And they found that the congestion increased by 47%. Wow. So it just will be devastating to mobility in our region. So I'm hopeful, very hopeful that through the negotiations, they're in conference committee right now, and with the governor who has voiced strong support for transit, that there won't be cuts. I'm still hopeful that they will fund increases and grow our system, but
One never knows.
one never knows.
Well, another area of the council's responsibility is housing. Can you describe how the Metropolitan Council gets involved in housing and how the decisions made by the council affect our cities?
Yes, and I would describe the council's role in housing, and we have a significant role, as having some carrots and few, if any, real sticks. The council runs the Metro Housing and Redevelopment Authority, or Metro HRA, and that is the largest HRA in the region. It serves Anoka, Carver County, suburban Hennepin, and Ramsey County, so about half of the communities in the region. It's rental assistance, so low-income folks only have to pay 30 to 40% of their income for rent, and then the council makes up the difference directly to the landlord. So that's the Section 8 program. We have such a need for these Section 8 vouchers that we have a waiting list. And the waiting list, it's about 3 years once you're on the waiting list. The waiting list is closed. It's mostly closed.
Wow.
In 2015, we opened it up for a period. There were 36 applicants for 2,000 spots, and it was just a random drawing. So affordable housing is acute, or the need for affordable housing, I should say, is acute in our area. Recently, we've started a new program, and we are doing mobility counseling. So those folks that are in our Section 8 program and have vouchers, so that they can look at these opportunity-rich areas as opposed to living in concentrated areas of poverty. And we found, our research is that if they can go to these opportunity-rich areas, we can break that cycle of poverty. The other thing that the council does is the legislature requires us to determine in 10-year increments, the amount of new housing, affordable housing, that we're going to need in the region. And we just worked on the decade from 2020 to 2030, and the council determined that we're going to need about 37 more units of affordable housing. Now, this is just new, and that's just for 10 years. It does not address the need. And then what happens is this ties into that comp planning process.
Oh, okay.
And so the cities have to have, so I should back up. There's 37,000 for the region, and then we allocate that to each of the cities and townships based on the household growth that they're going to have, the proportion of low-wage jobs to low-wage workers in their area, and also the existing housing that they have, affordable housing that they have. So they each get assigned how many units they need to plan for. So I looked up the city of Minnetonka. It was 1,064 units for this 10-year period from 2020 to 2030. And Spring Park, where we're in, is 23 units. So you can see that it's...
So each city is given a goal for how many units to plan for over the next 10 years.
Yes, it's a goal, but they also, when they do their comp plan process, they have to show the council that they have enough land guided to accommodate that in their comp plan process. So it's a little more than a goal, but then what happens is if that affordable housing isn't built, the council can't do anything. And I don't mean to make this seem like the cities aren't trying to build more affordable housing or workforce housing, because they are. But it's really hard, it's expensive, and you can get community pushback, particularly those communities that are doing it for the first time. The city of Medina recently built some affordable housing, and I had come on the council fairly recently when they were going through that planning process, and they asked me to come out to one of the events where I witnessed firsthand the community pushback, and it was tough. Now, they did get it built, and I think that's a big hurdle for communities. Dayton also, the city of Dayton also put in their first project. And once the projects are built and all the fears don't come to pass, then I think it's easier to build subsequent housing. But again, the council, very few sticks and a lot of carrots. And the housing that is getting built is falling short. We're reaching about 1,000 each year, new units, when it should be 3,000 to 4,000. And then our final carrot is that we have grant programs that you can either actually qualify for help with affordable housing through our livable community grants, or we do what's called a housing performance score, where we evaluate the community's efforts to try and build more affordable housing and maintain the housing that they have, the affordable housing that they have. And those count for other grant programs, both livable communities, and then we recently tied it to the allocation for federal transportation grants through the regional solicitation. Sorry, that's a mouthful.
Well,
I tried to keep it simple, and I'm not as good at it.
it's a complicated
Yes.
subject.
Yes.
What is an aspect of the Metropolitan Council work that you wish residents knew more about, something that you think is important but is not widely known?
So I'll try not to put you to sleep with this one. I wish that people knew that the council saved them money every day. We provide services with such economies of scale that we are able to do it more cheaply. And Jennifer talked to you about her summary of what she described the council doing as buses, flushes, parks, and housing. And I like to say, we're saving you money on buses, flushes, parks, and housing. And I'll just give a couple examples. Again, I hope I don't put you to sleep, but we treat 90% of the region's wastewater, and we do it at 40% lower cost than our peers. We provide 90% of the transit rides in the region, and we have the lowest average subsidy per passenger.
So when you say there's a low subsidy, you mean that the fares are paying for a lot of the costs to run the system?
It used to be. We used to be the envy, and I should clarify, all transportation is subsidized. The roadways are subsidized, buses subsidized,
That's a very
LRT.
good point.
All transportation is subsidized. That's why there's millions of dollars in the legislation right now to repair those roads and expand those roads. So back to fare box recovery. Yes, that is a measure of how well we're doing in terms of recouping our costs through the fare box. We used to be the envy of the nation. But what happened is we didn't raise our fares for almost 10 years. So now that fare box recovery has gone down. We still do the best, compared to the suburban transit providers. But we, on average, but we need to raise our fares, and we're currently looking at fare increases. As I said before, and we're looking at a quarter on the base fare, or 50 cents. Also, Metro Mobility is a really expensive service, a really needed service, but because it's door to door, the subsidy is $24 per passenger, which is huge. And just to put that into context, LRT is actually really cheap. Once you build LRT, operating it is very cheap. That's only $1.84. That is one of the lowest. It is the lowest per passenger subsidy of any mode. And I don't think that's well known. And kind of the sad irony is that some legislators have really said, we want your fare box recovery to be 40%. Well, the mode that comes closest to that is actually LRT. And they're blocking our efforts to expand LRT.
Well, I think that certainly is surprising information that a lot of people don't know about. That's very interesting. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Jennifer talked about the Thrive 2040 and comprehensive plans. Is there a difference in this round of cities trying to develop their plans the last time that we went through this?
It actually isn't going to be a lot of difference. Okay. I mean, our regional development guide, it follows the census, and then the council develops a regional development guide, and ours is called Thrive MSP 2040. A lot of people just call it Thrive. And that's our vision, and it contains the planning policies for the next 10 years, or I'm sorry, 30 years. And then from there, the cities are going to develop their comp plans, and they have to be consistent with Thrive, and then the other policy plans, which are transportation, water, and parks. And the difference is this year, because 2030 had such growth anticipated, most of the suburban communities have already accommodated that growth. The recession really slowed that down for the suburbs. So that will be easier. Plus, Jennifer talked about a lot of resources that our staff have provided for cities to make it easier for them. And so I think it'll be easier from that perspective. There's 2 new optional elements that they can put into their comp plans, and that is dealing with resiliency and economic competitiveness. And those are 2 outcomes in the Thrive plan. Resiliency is all about dealing with the impacts of climate change. You also briefly touched on the impact of those rainfalls. We're having just these intense rainfalls much more frequently, and how our city's going to build their infrastructure to deal with that, et cetera. But also economic competitiveness. I just listened to something from Greater MSP, which is all about making sure our region competes in our new global economy. And they said, we look at trying to compete with Seattle or Pittsburgh or Austin or those cities in the US, and really we should be thinking about Shanghai, China. We really need to think much more broadly about this. And so it talks about industry clusters and what cities can do to be attractive to those industry clusters and build on that, but also attractive to bringing workers in, because we're in the middle of a worker shortage.
Well, thank you, Katie. Thank you for being here today. You and Jennifer have shed so much light on how the Metropolitan Council works and how it affects all of us out here. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It was my
You're
pleasure.
very welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Karen, for being here today. And again, thank you to Jennifer Munt for being here for the first part of our program. It feels like we've barely scratched the surface of everything the Metropolitan Council does, but you can find out more by going to their website, metrocouncil.org. The League of Women Voters of South Tonka serves the cities of Deep Haven, Excelsior, Greenwood, Tonka Bay, Shorewood, and Woodland. We welcome both men and women as members to our organization, and we invite you to join us. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan, so we don't support or oppose political parties or candidates, but we are political. We study issues, we take positions, and we lobby at the local, state, and national levels. The League encourages everyone to get informed, to get involved, and to vote, and we provide lots of information and make it easy to do that. For more about what we do in the South Lake area, you can go to our website at lwvsouthtonka.org. I'd like to thank the Lake Minnetonka Communications Commission for the opportunity to present this program, and thank you for watching.